Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the podcast. I'm joined today by Danny Miranda. Danny Miranda is a young legend, up and coming podcaster. Been crushing it in the podcast game for a long time now. Has hosted some really top tier guests, and in general is just such a high agency individual. I've been admiring Danny's work for a long time, and I'm really excited to have him on the podcast today. Thanks so much for joining, man.
Thank you for having me. And it's so interesting being introduced as a podcaster when I haven't published a podcast for about 3 or 4 months, but the the podcast has been so impactful to me over my journey. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's awesome that you're doing this because it really did shift me and change me as a human.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm super stoked to get into your whole journey and where you're taking things now. Um, yeah, that makes me think, how does it feel to be introduced as a podcaster? Like, did that you are you trying to expand into something new or consider yourself something different, or how does that look for you?
I think that we are so many different things as human beings, and we play different roles at some moments in time. And I think what it brought up for me is the feeling of um, being introduced as a student after 3 months after graduating college. It's like, yeah, it's still true. I'm still a student. I'm still a podcaster. Like the
Mhm.
student, you can't take the student out of me just because I left school, sort of
Right.
thing. Um, so it's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet.
It also doesn't feel present as if I would introduce myself as a podcaster, but it's a good reminder of like this is part of who you are.
hmm hmm
Does
Yeah,
that make
definitely.
sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also, where that's kind of like my experience with your work has been through your podcast. So that's kind of how I sort of assign that identity to you. And of course, there's so many other like facets of your life that, I'm excited to dive into today. But yeah, it is kind of interesting though. That's like what you present to either social media or to the world. And then that's how everybody kind of assigns you. They give you that label without you really being aware of it. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and also it is because I gave myself that label for so long,
hmm
right? And it was interesting even when I introduced myself to people as a podcaster a year ago or 2 years ago. I think it was around a year ago where my friend Elle, she would after I did that repeatedly and she heard that repeatedly, she said, Danny, when you say you're a podcaster, it doesn't feel right to me. And I was like, why? Why doesn't it feel right? She said, to me, you're so much more than a podcaster. And when you're introducing yourself as a podcaster, it's boxing you into this way of being that I see you as so much greater than.
Mm,
And so I thought that was really interesting. And I saw what she meant in the time, but I didn't fully embrace it until uh, a year later, I guess.
hmm Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's one of the reasons that I was so interested in setting up this conversation with you is because I feel like opposed to other podcasters who are, I don't want to say one dimensional, but are like really focused on one specific topic or, one specific interview style. Like you seem to have like a whole kind of like spiritual aspect to it. And on top of that, your podcasting style, like I really appreciated the fact that you did extensive research and you really were like trying to get to know your guest on a really deep level as opposed to just like using them to sort of promote yourself or whatever it was, so I really appreciated that side of how you approach podcasting.
Thank you for saying that. And it was the idea behind it is asking myself, how could I make the other person feel seen and
hmm
understood?
yeah,
And so I appreciate that.
yeah, definitely. So let's get into a little bit of your backstory, man. I want to hear about how you first got into podcasting. I understood that you've been doing some blogging since a young age, right? Since you were a teenager, and then transitioned that into the podcast and started having conversations with some really high profile individuals out there. So I was curious if you could just speak a little bit to that whole journey, and how that's been for you, going into your current phase of life.
Sure. So I got into podcasting because I put out on Twitter, who wants to talk on the phone? And I had these such deep conversations with people all around the world. This was in June, July of 2020. And I felt so great connecting with awesome human beings. And I felt, wow, this is really what I'm supposed to be doing, talking to people and helping people understand themselves. And by virtue of doing that, I'm understanding myself better. So this is super cool.
Hmm.
And I decided to press record on the podcast and press record on the calls rather. And that turned into me instantly realizing I loved podcasting. I loved connecting with humans and I loved being um, able to learn about people in that way.
Hmm.
So that continued for hundreds of episodes. And then it led to me realizing, oh, what I'm actually doing when I'm enjoying the podcast the most is I'm coaching people. I'm helping people learn more about themselves so they can be better in their day-to-day life. And sometimes that happens on the podcast and sometimes it doesn't. And what I really enjoy in all this is being able to give guidance and being able to ask questions that help people see themselves more clearly.
Mm.
So that's what I've started to do over the past uh, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. How long has it been? I don't even know. It feels like forever, but
Yeah,
it's a good, it's good. It's been a fun journey.
right on. So would you say that you're moving more into kind of one-on-one, personalized coaching as opposed to interviewing on the podcast, or is that where things are headed now?
Yeah, and retreats as well. I
Okay.
really, I'm somebody who is here to help people transform.
Mm.
And whether that's through a podcast, whether that's through one-on-one coaching, whether that's through a random stranger I see on the street, whether that's anyone, it doesn't matter really if I'm getting paid to do it or not. I'm a human that's been put on this earth to help people transform and
Mm.
to grow.
Right on, right on. Yeah, so I had I've seen, just through social media that you are friends with Bobby Hobart, correct?
Yes, my boy.
So yeah, so Bobby was on the podcast. He talked a little bit about some of the retreats, and I'm just curious to hear from your perspective, like what people can expect to get out of something like that, and why you would recommend a retreat. Like, did you go on one that transforms your life, or how did that all come about?
I think it came about because my friend Elle, now mentioning her twice, she's the best, Elle Beecher. She said to me one day while we were taking a walk, she said, you know, people really should experience your energy in if people lived with you for 3 days, they would get a lot out of it. And I
Mm.
said, okay, let's do that. You know?
Hmm.
And so that was the birth of the retreat. And she gave me the prompt and the request of don't look at anyone else's. Don't go to anyone else's. Don't do anything else because that will shift how you're going to create your retreat. And I think
Mm.
that was really good advice for me. And
Hmm.
it just came about because I wanted people to be able to feel me. It's one thing to experience me on a podcast. It's one thing for me to talk to you for 10 minutes. It's one thing for me to host a run club where we're together for an hour and a half. But if you live with me, you would be in a higher consciousness state. You would be in a different place because I'm playing music where it's just lifting the mood. I'm looking at the bright side of things. I'm connected with myself. I'm connecting to God. I'm connecting to all things in every moment. That's what I'm here to do. And so, um, yeah, that's kind of the birth of the retreat. What should people expect? I mean, people should expect to leave feeling more understanding of themselves, feeling a greater sense of purpose, a greater sense of connection, more love, more gratitude, more appreciation, more better relationships, more money, all of it. That's what they
Hmm.
should expect.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
Right on. How did you get to this high vibrational state that you're working at right now? Have you always been just like high energy, high consciousness,
Mm.
or was it like a conscious process to get there over the years?
Yeah, it's definitely been expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction over and over and over again since I started meditating, which
Mm.
I would consider my first expansion. My first expansion started in 2019, where I start meditating and I start to see and experience synchronicities and connections that did not make sense, but that were so clear and obvious and pointing me to the direction that I was supposed to go.
Mm,
Would you like to hear one or two?
absolutely.
So, I mean, you might love this because it's one, the first one that comes to mind is in San Diego, but I was I had a job and I was like, I don't like this job. I quit the job um, with no real idea of what I was going to do next. And within a week or two, I started saying, okay, I'm going to help build courses for online creators. That was what just came to mind of like, this is the next move. So I start to cold email all these creators, and very few of them respond. But one of them did respond. And I spoke on the phone for with this guy for 30 minutes. And he was super excited and he responded to my email right away by saying, like, let's get on the phone. So we spoke for 30 minutes. And I was like, this is amazing. This is a guy I follow online and now I'm talking to him on the phone. What in the world is happening? Like,
Hmm.
this is awesome. The next day I go to a coffee shop in La Jolla. Don't remember which one, but I know for sure it was in La Jolla. I could pick it out on the street if I saw it. And I go downstairs and to go to the bathroom, and I come back upstairs. As I'm coming up, a woman who's at the top of the stairs locks eyes with me, who's seated down, and she starts talking to me. And she said, I don't know why, but I feel compelled in my heart right now to invite you to my church. I said, okay, that's great. She said, the reason why I think you would enjoy this church is because last week a guy came and spoke to the church and you would really love him. I was like, great. What's his name? It just so happened that the guy who spoke at the church last week was the same guy I spoke to on the phone.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. And what's even crazier is that I didn't go to church,
Hmm.
because I felt like it was too much. It was too fast. It was happening too. I don't want all the blessings. Um,
Wait, hold on. So
but
this guy was living in San Diego. Did you know he was in San Diego when you got on the phone
he
with him?
he was not living in San Diego. He had flown into that church.
Wow.
Yeah,
What are the odds? That's
yeah.
wild.
I mean, impossible, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
only possible through connecting to God. I mean, only possible through connecting through meditation. Only possible because shit like that did not happen to me. Now, also in 2019, I'm I'm thinking, oh, I should be a personal trainer. Maybe like no one's responding to me being a course seller. Let me be a personal trainer that follows in line with my passion. So I start doing 75 hard. And this is 2019. 75 hard is 0 years old. It hasn't even been out for a year. It's not a program that's widespread. I go to the gym across the street, which is a gym specifically for personal trainers. I walk in the door, and the owner of that gym is doing 75 hard as well. And I was
Wow.
like, what is going on? So I use those two as an example of expansions, of moments where it was like, wow, I see the path. I see that I'm doing the right things. I see that the world is expanding.
Hmm.
And after that is a period of contraction where I'm depressed because I stopped meditating, because I stopped doing 75 hard, because I'm no longer feeling this energy, feeling like I can do whatever I want. And so what I've experienced over the past 5 years now is expansions and contractions over and over and
Mm,
over again to bigger and bigger degrees.
I
Does that
see.
make sense?
Yeah, so it's almost like, you're making some forward progress, you're taking a couple steps forward, and then there's one step that is in the opposite direction, whether that's because you fell off the wagon on some of those routines or other things that come up in life, that are just variables, right?
Correct. And so I don't um, want to paint the image ever of myself as always operating in the highest consciousness place with the most love and enlightenment for all. I mean, genuinely, like I was in the deepest depression 4 months ago, and I posted videos about it. I went through a breakup that tore my heart outside of my body and gave me pain that I can't even. So painful, really painful. And Now I sit here today being very grateful for that situation and being very grateful for all the learnings from it. So yeah, expansion and contraction. And I guess my heart goes out to people who are in that contracted state because I know how painful that really feels. I really do.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and also just knowing, I feel like that gives you so much confidence knowing that there's just a natural process. When you're in that phase of contraction, the expansion is almost inevitable as long as you keep doing what got you there in the first place. I feel like that can give people a lot of confidence and a lot of reassurance, you know.
Definitely.
Uh,
And yeah,
yeah, go on.
I was just going to say I've realized over the past 4 months how important it is in those contracted states to start small and
Hmm.
to really sit with what is the smallest thing you can do in this moment that will move you just a little bit forward.
Mm,
Because in those states, it feels like you've lost everything. It feels like you don't know the roadmap, you don't know the plan, you don't know the future. You thought you had an idea of what to expect, and you didn't get it.
hmm.
And starting small, I found has been very important in that whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I love these types of conversations just because I feel like a transformation of any sort that people go through is just endlessly fascinating. And it can show that, you know, no matter who you are, what kind of stage of life you're in, you do have that ability to kind of remold your life to your liking. And yeah, and it just gives you more optimism, more hope for the future. You know, especially hearing things like what you're saying, that you can really dramatically change course in life and reinvent yourself. I think that's amazing. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So I want to hear your take on something that you said. I forget where I heard you say this, but the quote was, "Love and peace arises when nothing is present." And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a bit and what you meant by that exactly.
Yeah. I think if you look at the picture of life, it's like billions of years got us to this moment right here. Of course it's perfect. We are literally here in this moment. The only thing that could make you feel as if it wasn't perfect was your own thoughts, your own fears, your own insecurities, your own worries, your but if those didn't exist, if nothing was present, by nothing in this situation, I'm saying your own fears, insecurities, worries, if those fears were not present, if those insecurities were not present, you would just feel love and peace for the truth of what is.
Hmm.
That billions of years got us to this moment right here.
Hmm.
And you just, what the, how is that possible?
Hmm.
And I noticed this in states of meditation where nothing is present, no thoughts are present. And what is the feeling immediately after the meditation? Love and peace for all
Hmm.
things. So
Hmm.
nothing was present, no thoughts were present, and I felt love and peace. Interesting. Good to know.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, that's something to strive for, to
Does
kind of
that make
just.
sense to you?
Yeah, it does. It does. You know, I've also been meditating kind of around the same time, since around the same time that you said you started in 2019, and I've experienced, you know, bits and pieces of that, moments of clarity, and synchronicities like what you're talking about. Nothing as dramatic as that story. That's mind-boggling. But I remember like a specific time after I had started meditating where I was walking outside. It was fall. I was in the Bay Area at my first job in San Jose, and I was just going for a walk, like not doing anything profound. And I remember just the look of the leaves, like seeing the changing of the colors in the trees and like some of the leaves falling down. I had never felt a feeling of like peace and just tranquility like that. And I was thinking, I was like, how did that happen? You know, I wasn't even doing anything crazy. I wasn't like at an amazing location. But I connected the dots, and it had to do with that practice, you know, that stillness that I was able to get to. So yeah, that quote really resonated with me, and I just wanted to dive in a bit more and understand like where that came from for you.
I appreciate that. And how long do you think it took you for you to feel that tranquility?
It was pretty soon after I started, like I would say 6 months.
Yeah,
And then ever since
beautiful.
then, I feel like it's just been like very marginal improvements as the
Yeah.
practice, as I've been more consistent with it, but I still get those moments and they're amazing.
Yeah, it is what I believe I've been chasing in the past when I've been looking for money or when I've been looking for fame is
Hmm.
really what I've been seeking is those moments of tranquility.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's absolutely something to strive for.
Yeah.
So I want to also just touch on something else that I saw you talk about recently. You have been really advocating for speaking your truth or telling the truth in everything
Yes.
that you're doing. And I want to just kind of, I don't know, play devil's advocate in some way
Nice.
because
Love
I've
that.
been studying quite a bit of like Robert Greene, and I read like Machiavelli the Prince recently. And those two books have kind of shifted my thinking around telling the truth because Robert Greene, he's advocating for like putting on a mask and how everyone wears a mask when they're out in public and in the workplace, and nobody ever can really tell the truth because that would just turn people away or expose your true intentions and set you back in some ways. So I'm curious how that jives with your messaging, and if you've thought about that conflict in some ways.
Totally. So what happens is when we wear a mask, we stop connection from taking place. And when you are attempting to gain power, you're not attempting to connect. And gaining power is something humans want to do. And I have empathy for those whose desire is power. My desire is for connection, and my desire is to be seen and to see another.
Hmm.
And when that is my desire, I have a different set of actions that are guiding me. And in this case, those actions are to tell the truth because telling the truth allows for um, the other person to be able to connect with me. And perhaps it does make me weaker in that moment, but it allows me to connect with the person that I'm speaking to and allows me to connect with myself and
Hmm.
value myself. So it depends on what your aim is. And my perspective is that when you're connected to people, truly connected, you have more power.
Interesting. So it's kind of counterintuitive in some ways.
Yes.
You could seek connection, which will ultimately give you power instead of seeking power and like sacrificing some of the authentic connection.
Right. Right.
Ah.
If you seek power by virtue of having people be fearful of you or you pretending to be somebody else than who you actually are, then when they find out who that you actually are and that you've been lying or putting a mask on, they're going to be disappointed because they were connecting to a false version of who you are.
So it's kind of like it's just like a ticking time bomb. Ultimately it's gonna blow up in your face, right?
Correct.
Cool, cool.
Correct.
No, I love that, man. I think that's great insight and really good counterpoint to all of that messaging around just being kind of a, I don't want to say shady character, but like self-interested or more
Yeah.
motivated by using people's like insecurities and things like that. Like it just didn't really sit well with me. So I was just stoked to hear, your messaging on that to the opposite side.
I love that.
Yeah. Um, so how does one stand out? This might be a little bit of a selfish question because I've got this podcast here on personal development, but how does one stand out? In your experience, this space is so crowded. There's so many people out there talking about similar topics, meditation, working on your self-awareness and all these different things. What do you think like made you stand out, or how can someone do that and separate themselves with unique ideas in such a crowded space?
So, a couple of things. One is I ask myself, how can I be the most me possible? How can I share online the truth of what I'd share with friends? That's first of all, because doing that made people feel connected to me. Secondly, I asked myself, okay, what can I do with guests that would be different than what they've experienced on any other show? And that was to do deeper research than anyone else. And from those places of connecting deeply with myself and connecting deeply with the guest, that allowed me to stand out because everybody else is taken. So I
Mm,
figured, why not be the best me possible? And the me that was researching was that's what I enjoyed doing with people. I enjoyed going deep onto their story and learning about them and going into the nooks and crannies of the internet to find out information. I wasn't trying to do it for any other reason than I enjoyed doing it. And I enjoyed the smile on their face when I saw them be seen. So
hmm
I think the way to stand out is to do what fills you with the most amount of joy and allows you to live in that joy fully.
mm, right. Yeah, that's a lesson for authenticity right there. I feel like if you aren't authentic, you aren't really enjoying it, like it'll shine through, even if the content or the podcast or whatever you're putting together is like on paper like a 10 out of 10. If that like underlying joy or like motivation is lacking, then I feel like people really they pick up on it quickly, you know?
Definitely. And what's the reason for wanting to stand out?
Um, the reason is just because, you know, I would like to just engage with more people. Like I would like to affect more people's lives. And so
Mhm.
I guess one way to do that is to separate from the crowd in some ways to be able to access more people. Like I guess it's more comes down to like exposure and setting myself apart in that way so I can just touch more lives. That makes sense.
Yeah, and what's going to happen when you touch more lives?
I'm gonna feel really good about myself. I'm gonna feel super satisfied, fulfilled, and all of that. Like
Yeah.
I feel like it really it gets me stoked when I get like a message from somebody that just vibes with one little story or whatever I shared online, and they're like, "This hit home. Like I'm on it. I'm putting my running shoes on, whatever it is. You know, that gets me stoked more than really anything else. So I would like more of that, I guess,
And what's the way to access that feeling in this moment?
in this moment, like
Yeah,
right now on our
right now.
conversation.
Right now.
Um, I mean, just drop some mind blowing wisdom on you. I don't know.
Do it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm trying to pick your brain, so trying to seek your wisdom out.
What I'm pointing to is that the more that you can live in the feeling of the feeling that you get when you are most fulfilled, the more
hmm
it will appear in your consciousness and awareness.
hmm I hear you. I hear
Do you
you.
understand? If you
Yeah.
printed out, I printed out all of the comments like that, the one that you described, and put them on my wall
Mm,
because I wanted to live in the feeling of the enjoyment that I got when that person responded to that message and I connected deeply.
hmm
And I said, okay, can I live in this feeling for 5 minutes a day? Can I live in it for 20 minutes a day? It's like working out. If you live in that feeling for every moment of your day, then of course you're going to find more and more ways to experience that feeling.
mm. Right, right. Yeah, you're already at that level, that frequency, and then you're just gonna it's gonna be a chain reaction. Like the more people you interact with, you're gonna bring that energy to them already, and then it's just gonna keep the cycle going, you know?
Correct. And so right now, and for me as well, I'm living in that energy in the random moment where somebody responds to me and they connect with me. But how can I increase the amount of time that I spend in that feeling if it is such an enjoyable feeling? Well, one way is to practice it like we would reps or
hmm
going to the gym, right? If
hmm
imagine if on our calendar every week we put 4 times working out, and the 4 times working out was us working out the feeling of being in joy and experiencing that joy for the hour straight.
Yeah, it'd be huge.
And we would impact ourselves deeply, which would then ripple inevitably to the rest of the world.
hmm Yeah, I like what you're saying about having the little messages printed out too, because it's similar to having that set period of time to look at those messages. Because you're saying, how do you access that part of your life? And it's like, all right, if it's already on your wall, you're gonna be reminded of it. You're gonna be continually refreshing on it, and like more likely than not, you'll be in that state of mind the majority of the time. So I think that's a great way to do it.
It will
Have a
inevitably also lead to more experiences of impacting people deeply.
hmm Yeah,
This
100%.
is so practical.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I gotta get my vision board going or my
Do
I
it.
don't know, gratitude board, whatever we want to call it.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, I keep a list in my phone of of just messages from people
hmm
and reviewing them, like finding a moment to review them every week is will be very important.
Hmm. Yeah. We got to get the mental reps in, right? Like I feel like it's so understated. People are just it's so easy to do something physical and get in the gym and you can easily see that progress because your muscles are developing or you're getting skinnier. But the mental reps, it's like it's a little harder to show, it's a little harder to hone in on. And of course, reading or like doing extensive research is like an easy way to do it. But this seems like one of the more kind of gray areas that it's harder to hone in on to improve yourself.
I think over the course of our lifetimes, emotional fitness gyms are going to be very popular.
Mm,
Emotional fitness gyms are places where people will go where they will learn how to access the emotional states that they want to receive multiple times a week, similar to them going to the gym, the
hmm
physical gym. And I have a feeling that it's going to be a massive, massive, massive business
mm. And
because at the end of go for it.
what do you do in there like in the emotional fitness gym? Like would you meditate or do journaling and things like that?
I think a great example of this is my friend Elle's third time mentioning her. Elle Beecher and Cameron Hogan, they're a couple, and they have a morning call called Great Morning. And what they do is you do you get put in a breakout room, and each person in the breakout room of three people says 10 things they're grateful for, 10 affirmations, and one healthy habit. And you go around the room, the breakout room, and you do this. And it's very powerful. You do this with people all over, they have every continent other than Antarctica, I think, who attend these. And it is so powerful to do it virtually. And I can even imagine it being more powerful in person to feel someone's energy, to see them expand and be in a different state. And so
Mm,
the retreat is one example of me creating an emotional fitness gym for people to expand. And I think they're just going to be widespread over the end by the end of my lifetime.
got it. Got it. Hey, I'll keep an eye out for the Danny Miranda emotional fitness gym.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, seems like you're on track there anyways, with the retreats as you're saying. So I want to pivot a little bit here because I want to talk about something else that I was speaking about transformations and how those are so fascinating. You talked about the meditation and how that transformed your life. Another thing that I've seen you talk about being transformative is the 75 hard challenge. So, what made that so much a game changer for you?
Yeah, it was at the time that I completed it for the first time, it was the most difficult thing that I'd ever done because I was always somebody who started something and then a week or two or a month later, I'd say, "Nah, I can't do it. No, I'm out. Nah, it's not. I don't have it within me to complete this." Always that type of person. And I knew that was an issue for me, but I didn't know what to do about it. And when I did 75 hard, it was difficult enough and it gave me things to check off every day that I started to feel as if I was somebody who completed things. And this shift from being somebody who couldn't complete things, literally felt like I couldn't complete anything I did, to completing on a daily basis first, and then on a 2.5 month basis made me feel completely differently about myself. And it allowed me to see that the stories that I was telling myself were false.
Mm. So it kind of just like reshaped your whole identity in a way over that 75 day period.
Totally. That's exactly what it did. And I'm so grateful for that.
That's awesome. I got to try it out. I've been throwing around the idea with some friends, but yeah, for one reason or another, we never commit to it. I feel like there's always an issue with one piece of it that we're talking about. Oh, there's a wedding coming up, and of course we want to drink for the wedding or whatever. It's just like, there's always things that get in the way. I feel like with following through 100%.
And I've also found that it changed me from somebody who could only do things with other people to being able to do things on my own.
Mm,
So I know when I started, I told two friends about it, and it was like, oh, we're gonna do this. But towards the end of it, I realized, oh, the people who get far in life are really people who are able to forge their will, regardless of if anyone else is on board for that process. And listen, I love friends, I love people. I think connection is the most important thing, but it's got to be connection from a place of love for yourself first. Because if it's not, you're not connecting on the realest level.
I love that. That's awesome. I'm inspired. I'm fired up right now. I'm gonna start it soon. I
Do
swear.
it. Do it.
Yeah. Um, so just talking about, I didn't realize that you were kind of trending away from the podcast, and I had a whole bunch of questions
Great.
here
I'm
about your
happy to talk
process.
it. Yeah.
Okay. So you had some, as I mentioned before, some high profile guests on, Hermosi came on, Andy Frisella. I think you had George Heaton on as well. And so what was it like getting tidbits of each of their lives and learning about all their experiences? Like what was that? What did that whole process do for you? And how was it, having someone on that's like of that stature?
Yeah. It helped me realize what role I was putting some of these people in my head and why I was putting them in that role. So first I realized they were just human beings, but in my head they weren't just human beings. In my head they were super heroic figures who were not human and I was like, why am I viewing people in this way? And I realized that it was because they were filling the role for me of what I wish my dad was. And
Mm,
that realization was very powerful to take these people off the pedestal for me. And
hmm
whenever we are putting other people on a pedestal based on how much money they make or how much attention they get on social media, we are doing so because there's some part of us that we are putting those people in. For some people, it could be their mom. For other people, it could be a friend that they never had or that they wish they had. For other people, it could be um, their dad or their brother. I wish my brother showed up like this. So now Alex Hormozy is my brother. I wish that I had a friend like Andy Frisella who would motivate me. So, because then it's like what you are seeking from people that you admire is the thing that you need to give yourself. Or you don't
mm.
need to, but that if you do give it to yourself, you benefit in the process.
I see. Wow. Yeah, that's a big realization. Like social media is kind of filling in the gaps in your upbringing that you were missing in your upbringing.
That's right.
I I felt the same way too with coming out of some hard breakups back in the day and like leaning on YouTube heavily for like relationship coaches, dating coaches and things like that to kind of talk me through the process because no offense to my dad if he's listening to this right now, but he didn't like give me that one-on-one guidance in a lot of ways. He was kind of more hands-off with that specific part of my life. Other parts, career and schooling, like he was amazing, but with dating, like it was just this void. And so I felt like I was constantly seeking that out through social media. And that's why I was looking at some of those guys on YouTube as like heroic figures, like you're saying, because they were parenting me in some ways. They were teaching me those life lessons that I still use today.
Totally. And recognizing that takes them off the pedestal
Hmm. Hmm.
and and also allows you to see what role they are actually giving to you.
Right. Right. And then, yeah, I'm sure that conversation could be much more genuine at that point if you're not kind of like idolizing them, right?
That's right. That's exactly
Hmm.
right. It becomes a much more real conversation when you can drop the mask and you can
Hmm.
actually connect with them.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's inspiring, man. I'm looking forward to, future opportunities like that to kind of expand my own awareness and look at social media in a different light, to where like these people are just humans, they're working on their own journey. I'm also working on my own journey. And that's something that I thought about too a lot when I was first starting the podcast. Like I was anticipating the reaction of people like, why are you qualified to give advice and talk about these topics about bettering your life? And I was really trying to hold steady in the fact that we all have our own wisdom to share, based on our own journey. And there's no real reason to just like idolize one person over another. Like obviously if they have specific skill sets, that makes sense. You look up to them for that. But in terms of like advice, like it can come from anywhere. Like it can come from an interaction that I have with somebody at the cafe today that's like profound, earth shattering. And just because I don't have, five businesses or whatever, I'm not extremely financially successful, doesn't mean I shouldn't share that advice. So I think that's been a key takeaway for me in having some of these conversations is like there's wisdom everywhere. There's people that have, maybe it's not a lot of attention on social media, but they also have like really, really deep insights. And I don't know. I feel like we have to just keep searching for that because it's a gold mine out there.
Yeah, and when you give yourself the permission to put stuff out on the internet, you you are basically saying my I choose myself and I believe that I am worthy of sharing information and giving people wisdom if that's your goal.
Hmm.
And that is a that is an amazing thing to own in oneself because it's very easy to reject yourself
Mm,
because you've been taught that, oh, only if you have a degree can you share information. Oh, only if this amount of people know you or if you've started this amount of businesses can you share information. And it's not true.
hmm.
And I'm grateful that you figured that out.
Definitely, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a good first step, and that does make me reflect on how big of a step that is in the first place. Just launching something is worth celebrating. Even if it's not wildly successful, the fact that it's happening
What
is
is
like,
success?
yeah, exactly, right? It's defined completely different for every single person.
Right. What is
Uh,
success for you?
Personally, for me, like I don't know, I talk about on this podcast the five pillars of health, like mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and financial, and improving, moving the needle in all those areas. So I guess freedom across
Hmm.
those areas would be successful for me. Um, and not just for myself, but also to be able to share that with my loved ones. So at a really high level, I guess that's what I would call my vision of success is just exploring each of those areas of life and having stability and freedom in all of them. That sounds incredibly vague, the way I say it just now, but
Well, yeah, well, I was curious what makes success in for this podcast to make it
for
more specific and practical.
yeah, for the podcast, I guess to have a specific, I don't have like a specific number. I feel like it's always easier to assign a number to it, but I would like to, I don't know, I would like to, like we talked about earlier, like touch people's lives in the way that I've seen in a small level, with some of those messages and people saying what you spoke about on this episode made me think about things in a different light. So I would like to just affect as many lives as I can in that way. And that would be a success for me. But I guess it needs a number, right? It would need to be to like really track it. It would need to be like 1,000 people, or I don't know. I have my own metrics when it comes to plays and listens and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know if that's really tied to the overall success of it, that deep feeling of like satisfaction of affecting people's lives.
Yeah, I hear you. And I had this goal of having 1 million downloads a month as my North Star, as my mission. I wrote it down 1 million times. I that was where I was going. And then I kind of realized that it didn't matter. It didn't feel any different if it was 1 million or 100,000 or 10,000. It didn't feel any different.
Hmm.
And I was like, whoa, this is interesting. This is really interesting that what I thought would bring me fulfillment and what I thought would be success was not.
Hmm. Oh,
This is
that's
interesting.
yeah, that's crazy to think about. Like, why are you chasing that specific number?
Correct.
Because a
Correct.
million people it's not necessarily more is better, right? If you affect 10 people's lives in a profound way, like maybe through what you're talking about one-on-one coaching versus 100 people very surface level, it's way better, right?
Yeah. It feels different to
Hmm.
coach 10 people and to experience them transform that it does for me to impact 10,000 and for them to listen to a podcast. It
Hmm.
feels different. The level of connection is different.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Dang, I got to do some reflection after that. Um,
Good. Good.
yeah.
And
All
and
right.
not to say one's better or worse, by the way,
Mhm.
just that it was interesting for me to evaluate the my own internal feeling. For some people, genuinely, it feels a lot better for them to impact 1 million people. For some people, it feels genuinely better for them to coach 10. It's so individual, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. It's
Mhm.
just something that each person should, if they are trying to be conscious and wise, evaluate for themselves.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Just always question why you're chasing something. At the end of the day, getting crystal clear on that will benefit you in the long run. So you don't go after it for 10 years and then you get it and you're like, wait, this doesn't even make me feel that good. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. So you're writing a
and
book,
that's okay
man.
too.
I want to hear about this
Yes.
book and we can dive into this, for our last bit of the segment here. What is the book focused on? What are you trying to get out into the world with it?
So my video editor recently asked me, like, dude, what are we focused on? And what should I make clips of you for? And shout out to Video King Pablo. He's the absolute GOAT. Been with me since February of 2023, I believe. And I realize that it's really clear to me what I'm trying to do, but it's not that clear to him. And he knows me better than probably any person who is he knows me better than any person who's watched my content, considering he spent more time with me than pretty much any person and chopped up clips of me nonstop, right?
Yep.
So, and I love him. Like I genuinely have such appreciation for Video King Pablo. But if he doesn't know what is important to me or where I want to go, then it's not clear to anybody. But it is clear to me. So I figured, what should I do? Well, I should take my most important ideas and principles and the things that I live with, the things that when I go to a retreat, are top of mind for me, the things that when I'm doing a podcast, I'm thinking about, and I should put those in one resource. And so that's what the book is. The book is all of the most important ideas to me in one place.
Mm, okay. Okay. I'm excited to see it develop and dive into that. I mean, I think we talked about a few of those ideas today. Um, Finding that presence, when nothing is present, you can develop more love for yourself and for others. And then also speaking the truth. I'm just kind of guessing what'll be in there, but these are great topics, and I feel like everybody needs them. Everybody needs to hear these things and think deeply about them.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And um, I really believe that why we're here on this earth is to become more love. Like we all are on that mission, and we can think in moments it's to make more money, or it's to buy a bigger house, or it's to um, have this amount of followers or this amount of downloads. But I genuinely believe at the core of it, you created and were created so that you could experience yourself as more love.
Mm. That's
And
beautiful,
so,
man. Yeah, I
yeah,
couldn't agree more. I think that's at the core of it. Everything else is kind of surface level until you get down to
yeah,
that level.
yeah. And the best way to become love and is to look at all the places in yourself that you don't love and
Mm,
to make peace with those
hmm.
and to greater appreciate those. And that's what I'm here to do. Help people find that within themselves.
Fantastic. Any idea about when this is coming out, or is this very early stages?
Early stages, but I move quick. I we'll see. If this is my focus and this is my attention, I will go all in on this like I do on everything else, podcast, video series. So I don't
Hmm.
know when it'll be, but we'll see.
All right. Well, we'll stay tuned. Again, man, I really appreciate your time coming on here and sharing all your wisdom and insight and just your history with podcasting. It's been super useful for me, and I think it'll be really really insightful for everyone listening. So again, really appreciate your time, and just wanted to see if there's any last thing you want to leave the listeners with, where they can keep up with you or where they can find the latest updates and whatnot.
Yeah, I would say what I want to leave people with is that the most important thing is that you own your desires fully. And so if you have something in your heart that you know you should do, or a passion or an excitement, And it could be quote unquote surface level, right? Not to judge that desire. Try to get famous if that's really what is on your heart. Try to make a bunch of money if that's what's on your heart. Try to get jacked. Like do it all. Like I'm here for if these are desires of yours, don't suppress them. You're going to be upset at the end of your life if you do, even if they're surface level or shallow in any way. So own your desires fully. That's what I'll say to end it. And I think it's really important that people ask themselves, what desire am I suppressing? What desire do I think is shallow? What desire am I scared to go after? And go after it. Go for it.
Mm.
Um, and you can find me at Hey Danny Miranda on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. But really, go after your desires. It's fucking important.
That's the most important thing. You heard it from the man himself. And yeah, we look forward to seeing everything else from you in the coming future, man. Really appreciate your
Much
time
love,
again,
bro.
and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.